Hello and welcome. It's good to have you here back on another show called Building Experience with Mark Schultz. I'm Mark Schultz and work for Adobe and want to share with you some of the latest innovation and thought process behind what goes into our products. We've got another amazing show coming up today, and I thought it'd be good to get a few of my colleagues back to talk about a great topic. But before we go there, just a quick reminder: run these sessions on a whole bunch of different topics. So if you want to make sure that you get the latest and stay in touch about when we release new shows, etc., just hit the subscribe button and you'll get the notifications. All right, with that in mind, let's get straight into bringing our guest in and let's start the conversation. All right, gentlemen, welcome. It's great to have you on the show. William and Anurag. All right, guys, I've known you for some time. I've been with Adobe for 18 years. You both have had a bit of, a bit of experience with the company. William, I think there's an event that you're celebrating today.
Yeah, look, I don't know where you found that out from, but it's actually my 6th anniversary today.
Well,
so I'm pleased to say that I've made it through 6 years.
You've done rather well. Anurag, how long have you been with Adobe?
I've been with Adobe for last around 18 years or so, Mark, and it's been a long journey. So I am the dinosaur in the room.
Yeah, well, we shared a lot of that time together, mate. So it's good. So, William, how about you introduce yourself? What do you do for Adobe?
Yeah, sure. So my name's William, and I'm a solutions consultant at Adobe. I work in the content space, so it means that I get to focus heavily on AEM, hence the reason that I'm on today's show. And just helping customers of all different shapes and sizes and industries, just really trying to get to the root of their problems. What is it that they're trying to solve?
Yeah, and you're based in Sydney?
No, I'm actually in Melbourne. So I'm one of the Southerners.
There you go. Thank you. Anurag, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm based out of India office. Been with this product since the very beginning, since Lifecycle 6.0, the very first release in 2004. I've seen this product evolve through various stages, and now we just launched the cloud service. So seen how it evolved, and how the product is progressing. So I basically, my role is, I manage the product management part of AEM Forms, and I tend to drive how the product will shape up in future and how we serve our customers better on a day-to-day basis.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've got a lot to talk about today, so let's get straight into our feature topic. All right, today we're going to talk about forms and building forms. And, ever since I joined Adobe, I've been helping organizations with this. But, gentlemen, forms is something that's near and dear to all of us because we often see the pain that customers go through as they try and create great experiences for their end customers. Let's get straight in and talk about some of the scenarios around forms because quite often people forget, where forms are used and how often. So, Anurag, do you want to start with some of the use cases we think about when we think about forms? Because it's not just filling in forms, is it?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So actually, it's a problem that's hidden in plain sight, right? And everybody across the globe, right? So this is a problem that everybody faces on a day-to-day basis. But filling a form or receiving a document, right? That has to cater to your immediate requirements. That has to be quick, fast, painless, but generally it is not so. So generally we end up filling paper forms, and that's that are requiring a lot of supporting documents, a lot of information. A lot of information is duplicate at times. So that's the kind of challenge and that we receive. The problems that we are trying to face all the time, right? So we are trying to solve it. AEM Forms specifically is trying to solve it by building through an enterprise software. And what we provide is all those experiences that relate to enrollment, onboarding, receiving customer communications, or say raising service requests, update my address, update my contact details, and all those things, right? So those are the problems that are hidden in the plain sight, and that's what we are trying to address through the solution.
Great. And William, you're out talking to customers all the time that share these pain points. what are the kind of common things that you hear from without naming and shaming anyone? Like, where are the pains, and what do people say? Help us.
Oh, look, I would never name and shame any of my customers. Look, the thing that I'm finding is that there's a really consistent theme across the board. And it all really starts with IT being overstretched at the moment. And I'm talking to all of these departments. I'm talking to IT, I'm talking to marketing and content authors, and it really is a consistent message that I'm getting. How do we actually produce forms, and how can we successfully like pivot if we're running like a competition or a marketing event or whatever it may be? How do we actually create a form and get it live without being trapped in this situation of where we're having to wait days or weeks, or in some occasions months, in
Yeah,
order to be able to pivot and get stuff live?
yeah. And of course, forms experience has changed over time, right? I mean, it used to be a piece of paper and you could get a design person to create the form. And then how that got into a back-end system was someone else's problem. And then, we started these digital forms, PDF forms, so you could actually send the form to someone, but you still had to print it and fill it out. And fast forward to today, whereas, if we truly want, great experience, you've got to get that data out of the form and into where it needs to go as quickly as possible, and also correspond back. And so the roles and the personas, it's quite easy to just throw at IT, right? But you need the
Yeah.
business involved, because they're the ones thinking about, well, what do we need to understand from the customer? We need the brand involved, because we want consistent look and feel. And we find out that there's hundreds of forms across the organization. No one really has control over all of them. They're all in different states, and you even have the high value forms, like the application forms that get a lot of attention, but then there's this long tail of forms that just sit there and haven't been touched for some time. So I know, Anurag, your team has spent a lot of time thinking about forms across the entire organization. Is there anything else you want to share as far as the pain points that we're solving here?
Yeah, so just like William was alluding to as well, right? So there's a huge dependence on IT, although, people tend to digitize their forms and then they tend to do it in a variety of ways. They might create PDF forms, or, they might create some legacy forms, and, or the do it yourself space, right? Entirely create your own HTML based form. So there's a number of technologies. It's all a very fragmented, ways of doing things. But generally the problem is, managing all those things, all those number of forms and documents, and then, kind of keeping them up to date with all those, small minor corrections that tend to happen over time, keeping the branding and styling updated, and integrating into their own data system. So all those, challenges, when you try to do it in an ad hoc way, it is very, very difficult to scale, right, and maintain in a long term. So that brings a lot of inefficiencies in the organization, which, it's hard to realize unless and until you face the problem squarely.
Yeah, it's good. Look, I think there's a lot we could talk about here, but I think sometimes it's better to show rather than tell. So I know both of you had some great demonstrations, so we might go into one. William, you're smiling. I'm hoping you're good to show something. How about we start with you, and then we'll get Anurag to talk about some of the other innovations that his team have been working on.
Absolutely. And if you wanted to bring my screen up, I
Yeah.
wanted to start talking to you about. So, thinking back to the problem statement that I had earlier on about people having this dependency on IT and things being quite a slow process in order to be able to get things live. I was recently having a conversation with a customer who, they've heard all of the comments, oh, but it's difficult, forms are hard, and how do we actually create a meaningful form, and how long is that going to take us, and then, well, who's involved from an IT perspective? So I had a bit of a challenge as to, well, how much do you think that I could build in 10 minutes, and what is it that you think that you could deliver as a content author in order to be able to do that? And so what I wanted to be able to show you here, and I'm just going to twist slightly so you're going to see a slight side shot of my face, is on my screen at the moment, what you're seeing is I've set up this, I've connected to this free external service, something that's called GeoNames. And I always like to give a shout out to companies when they've got a good product. And this is actually a free service that I'm leveraging online. So big shout out to GeoNames as part of this. But what I've done is I've connected this service into my Forms platform. And I've set this up as a data model. And for those of you that are not familiar with the term data model, it really is just about exposing those endpoints that we want to be able to leverage. And so let me show you. I'll just test this out to show you what I'm going to be using in the form. So it's got these two endpoints around country and then children. And so if I just test this service and I've just copied something in here, whoops, what I can do is I can just provide my username and I get a pretty instant lookup of lots of different countries from around the world, all of it live, all of it ready to go. But then maybe I want to take that one step further and I want to find out all the states or cities within a particular country. I can use this child interface and now all of a sudden I've got all of the states of Australia. And I can even take that again another step forward and I could say maybe I want all the cities in Tasmania. And so this is going to form the basis of the demonstration I'm about to do. So in 10 minutes or less, I'm going to create a reusable address component and create a form that uses that reusable address component and save it into my CRM. Sounds too good to be true, but this is where we're at with the technology these days, and this is what it's capable of doing.
It does sound too good to be true. Let's have a look.
Let's have a look and let's get into it. So I've set up this folder here, building experiences with Mark Schultz. Oh, I've got a bit of a typo in there. You'll have to forgive me. I'm going to start out by creating an adaptive form fragment because this is actually what's going to be my address lookup. And I'll go ahead and just create this and say that I want to start editing it. Now, this is where I'm going to start leveraging that API that I was just talking about that my tech guys have configured. And I use the word configure because there was no coding, no release cycle as part of this. I've got my standard form stuff, including my toolbox of components. And I'm just going to go ahead here and I'm going to drag on a couple of lists because I want to start building out this form. And I'm going to have 3 components on here being basically a country, a state, and a city. But what I'm also going to do is and it will become apparent why I'm doing this in a minute, I'm going to put 3 text boxes on here. And I'll talk you through why I'm doing this in just a second. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got my special mouse pointer on. So now I've got the bones of what I want. I'm going to start to configure this. So I click on my little spanner and I'm going to start off by calling this one country and country. And that's great. I'm going to now call this one, when my screen wants to catch up with me, I'm going to call this state and state. So nothing groundbreaking yet. I'm really just laying the foundation for this reusable component. Now, this is going to be handy because it means that I can reuse this across all forms that have got an address component on it. Now, these things, if you think about it, because what I want to save into my CRM is I want to save the actual the description value of the country, state, and city that I'm typing in. So that's why I'm creating these little hidden objects that I can use using the rules of this underlying form. So I'll just set that country up and I'll call this one billing state, and I've just called them different things just so that I can identify which one's which. No other reason than that. So my billing state, and then finally, probably should have just done 2, shouldn't I? But never mind. I like to bite off more than I can chew sometimes. And I've got my city. So nothing groundbreaking here, and I can preview this and I can see I've got a form. It doesn't really do a hell of a lot yet. So let's start wiring this up using that service.
Hey, and just to check here, right? So you're building the form up from the data layer. So you have a backend service, any service you want to consume. You've picked the city lookup tool. You're then saying, hey, rather than build a form, I'm going to create a component that I'm going to use across multiple forms. Right.
Exactly.
And now you're doing the wiring up. Okay, cool. Let's have a look at that.
Exactly. So I only have to do this effort once, and this can be used across all my forms. So I jump into my rules editor, and I just need to create a selection of rules in the background here. So as part of my country drop down, I want to say I want to set the options of from a service output. So this is essentially this thing that I just wired up, this country info. Now, I've got to enter some authentication stuff in here. That's just because I'm using a free service. Typically, that would all be set up for you as part of that data connection. I want to display the country name as the visual element, and I want to track the geo name as the ID. And that's why I needed that hidden component, because if I just pull out the geo name ID, it's not going to save very nice values to my CRM. So I'll click done, but I do need to create a second rule in order to be able to do that. So what I'm going to be able to say here is that when my country changes, then what I want to do is I want to set the value of my billing country to one of the object properties, being the display value of country. Simple, right? Nearly there. I've just got to do my state and my city, and my reusable component will be done. And as you can see, I've not actually written any lines of code. I can do this as an actual author. This state, I'm actually going to use the children. So thinking about that example that I gave you before as to how this API works, I'm going to call the children one. Now, again, just like before, and again, just to repeat, all of this authentication information would typically be saved in the background, but the information that I'm passing to it is I want to pass the ID of the country that I've just selected. Now, again, my display value, I'm going to use my name, and my data value, I'm going to use my GeoName ID, because again, I'm going to need that for my city when it comes time to it. But again, I'm going to need the actual text value of this state. And so I'm going to set the value of my billing state to be my object property, being the display value of state. I'm 2/3 done, and thank you for sticking with me here. But as you can see, this has been quite a rapid process. And given the fact of the value that I'm going to get out of this reusable component and the fact that I only have to do this one, I think we can all agree I've spent a couple of minutes here and I'm almost done. And so I will choose my state there because the city is filtered based on the state. And again, my display value versus my ID. And almost done. Last but not least, just like with the last ones, I need to track that text value of what I'm showing. So the city, and it needs to be the object property of the display value of the city. And I'm done. All right. So that was pretty quick. Let's preview what this actually looks like.
Moment of truth. Are the demo gods with you? Let's have a look.
Let's have a look. Have they been kind? So I've got all of my countries in here, and when I select Australia, I've then got my states. I'll select Victoria because that's where I am, and then all of my cities. And I'm coming to you today from the city of Maribyrnong, and we're done. Matter of 2 or 3 minutes, I've been able to set up a reusable component. I'll never have to do this again, and I can reuse this across all of my forms. No coding, no waiting for a release cycle. There's huge value in that, right?
Yeah. So going back to the use case of brands having hundreds of forms, and how many of them require an address, whether I'm doing that service or I'm calling a pre-fill service based on my login, etc., I can reuse that now, right? So what's the effort to actually get that onto another form?
Let me show you. This is
even better.
This is where it really comes into its element. And this is where I'm going to show off a little bit, because what I want to do is I actually want to use this address lookup, and I'm going to use another connection that has already been defined to my CRM. And guess what? I'm using essentially 2 API lookup services and saving all of that information back to my CRM. That's super cool. So let's jump into creating an adaptive form. Now, as part of this, and we actually upgraded this wizard lately, and I think it's starting to look really slick. I'm going to choose my weekend form template. I get to choose my styles. So what do my buttons and what do my controls look like? I'm going to choose my vacation theme. And then what data connection am I going to use? Now, this could be a connection to your Salesforce, your Dynamics, to a SQL Server, essentially any endpoint with an exposed API with it, we can start to leverage. I'm going to connect to my weekend account because that's connected to my CRM. And as we can see from my submission, it wants to submit it using a form data model. I'll create this one and I'm going to call this one Mark because this one's just for you, Mark, and create. Now, what this is doing in the background is this is scaffolding out this form, and it's actually trying to be super helpful to me. And it's going to come up with some recommendations of the fields based on those objects that I was using. I'll just move my microphone out of the way so I can see a little bit better. And I can actually see the structure of this form that's built out, including the ID that my CRM is passing back. So if I, guess what, I want to give instant feedback to the people that have filled in the form, I can do. I'm just going to delete that for the purpose of today. And there's a couple of other things that I want to delete here because I actually do want to show off and use my reusable address component a little bit. So you have to just give me a couple of seconds to tidy up what has been automatically created here. So there, nearly done. And so now I've got the basis of my form. What I want to do is I actually want to find that form fragment that I created before. So my adaptive form fragments, and I've got my address lookup here, and I can simply drag and drop that onto the page. Done. It's as simple as that. Now it's going to maintain the styling of this form, but I'm not done there yet, Mark, because this isn't ready to go. I'm not happy with the name being under the phone, so I'm just going to drag that up and pop that above. But now I'm going to use one of my core components because guess what? I need a button. No form's complete without a button at the bottom. So there's a couple of things that I need to finish off here, being the first one, I need to have a look at my actual form container here, and I can set all of my autosave stuff if I need to do that. I can show thank you messages or redirections, but I'm going to bind this to my account. Great. And then finally, the last thing that I need to do is I need to set my button up. So just like with the other rules that I was showing you in the component, I'm going to set up a rule here because what I want to say is that when this button is clicked, what I want to do is I want to invoke a service, and I want to invoke my account service because I want to post it in. And now it's just a matter of selecting the fields that I want to save back to my CRM. So I've got these few things, my website, here's where it's got billing country. And so I'm going to say billing country because that's my nice text value, my billing state, and my billing city. Now, again, so this output ID, so again, if I wanted to give that instant feedback to my customers with a reference number, I could, but I'm done. And now I've got a reusable component inside a form that's also connected to my CRM. Shall we test it out and see if it works?
Yeah, let's see if it works.
Let's see if it works. Let's see if the demo gods will be kind. So I'm just going to pop in here, William, and put a phone number in here. And before anyone goes visiting this site, it's not a domain that I own. I don't know if it exists. So try it at your own peril. And Victoria, and just like before, whoops, I will say Maribyrnong because that's where I'm coming from. And then I'll click my button. I could have given it a better name. This is going to validate all the input. But the moment of truth, I'm in my CRM. Let's give it a refresh and see what happens. As you can
that.
see, it's saved.
I think that deserves an applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, just to really drive this message home, and because back to my original point around this being challenging for people, right? This is what people want to achieve, but they don't even know it exists, right? They think that they've got to go through these lengthy coding and release cycles, when in reality it's quite different. Not even the technical guys have to go through lengthy code releases. You know,
Yeah.
all of setting up those integrations to those external systems, it's all just configuration. And they can be done as fast as I've just created that form.
Yeah, and I think we should stress the point again. You did that entire thing from scratch. There was no cooking show moments where you said, "Let me show you something pre-prepared." You connected in real time to an existing service, and it could have been any service, right? And that's where IT go and expose, various different integration points out through no code, just configuration. You then made it reusable, so it could be used across hundreds of forms. But then you actually created one form, and you did that in 20 minutes. So if you start to think about, well, hang on, I've got 500 to do, actually the work diminishes the more forms you do because you're building reusable components and starting to build that out. Once you've got your data model and all that bound in, it works really well. So I think that was an awesome demo, and clearly you've done a few times because you got it all working in one go. So well done, mate. Um, what's the benefits before we move on? And I know, Anurag, you want to show some additional innovation that you've been working on, but let's bring it back to, how does it benefit? Obviously, that's cool, what you just showed, and it's easy to do, but what's the payoff, right? Versus just keeping what we've got now, just keeping those PDF forms and, hand coding some of the existing ones.
Yeah. Look, it really, so the benefit is A, it means that you're putting the power in the hands of your content authors.
Yeah.
B, it means that you can rapidly create these experiences that you want to create for your customers. And lastly, it means that your content authors, they actually can start to connect in those external line of business systems. So guess what? That needs to go to the CRM. We just choose the CRM object. It needs to go to your ERP. We choose the ERP object. Wherever it needs to go, it means now we're putting the power in the hands of those content authors, and it's just going to automate that whole process of making sure that the data ends up where it needs to end up. Now,
Yeah,
something I
absolutely.
didn't even touch on as part of this is you can even have these forms trigger off things like Power Automate flows. And so thinking about how cool things like that are, maybe when someone submits a form, we can start informing people, having that information at your fingertips when you need it. It's very compelling, and this is something that certainly my customers out there have been absolutely loving it.
Great. And we may be stealing some of Anurag's thunder, so we'll just hold on for the features. But Anurag, you were sharing some data points earlier around, the business benefit around, form completion. And, if these forms are more connected and easier to fill out and actually get the results faster, then, the cost deflection from, abandoning a form and actually going to a call center or, just getting more completions, right? I think you shared a stat around, 40 times more costly per transaction. That's pretty outstanding dollars when you start to think about the amount of interactions a lot of brands do. Do you have any other data points you want to share?
Yeah, exactly. So, thanks, Mark. And it's a study that was conducted by ITC, and having some great experiences for forms and documents, it increases your conversion rate. It's kind of shooting up your conversion rates by 20 to 40% immediately, and it's saving a lot of dollars. Actually, one of the other data point is, it takes roughly around $55 more for each form submission that's happening on paper or in your physical office, rather than it's happening on online, and it's much faster, and it saves a lot of backend efficiency as well. So there are multiple data points to back that up, the whole being effective and being efficient story narrative for any organization.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
We actually did. I don't know if you guys are aware, but we actually did some work with a council recently where they mapped out the costs, all right, and they found that someone coming into one of their council offices would cost them $17, and someone
Yeah.
calling up one of their call centers would cost them $9. And then by deflecting that and putting it online as a form, it would cost them $1 to $2.
Yeah,
So the numbers are there.
yeah. And I think we all realize that no one really likes filling out forms. So the better the experience you can make,
Exactly.
and streamline process. We also don't like waiting on the phone. We certainly don't like getting in our car and driving to an office. But at the same time, although, William, you were showing, dragging and dropping, there's an element of design and style and, making it super easy. I know in the past we've shown examples of even radio buttons and drop downs to make it easier for someone to choose the right option versus free flowing text. So the completion's higher, validation in the right way. So it's a good experience and not a, what do you mean I missed a field, 2 pages ago, etc. So might be a good time to switch over and get in the mind of the product team. Anurag, I know you've been working some amazing things. You got something that
Yeah.
you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, thank you. And just to add to your previous point, right, one important point that generally is of very much concern for say public sector or large organizations is around accessibility,
Yeah,
and that lacks a lot in paper form experiences or even call centers, or even in your quick HTML based dirty forms, right? So uh, with these enterprise offerings, right, with AEM forms, you can build all these forms that William was working, right? So these have a large amount of accessibility automatically built in, and then we can also have our style guidelines and other things quickly applied to have a standard look and
yeah,
feel and common experience across. So let's quickly take a look at some of the latest innovations. I have a video of it just to make sure that demo gods are not angry with me. So thank you, Mark. If you could just share my screen, please.
yeah, sharing.
Thank you. So this is the AEM Forms interface, and like William was showing, we click create an adaptive form. The point of this new interface of form authoring is, form authors, don't need to be developers. They don't need to be IT persona that they are trying to build out a form. Business users generally have a pressing need at their hand to make a campaign live, or some sort of an offering live, or to host an event. So they should be what they really need is a quick accessible tool to create a form based on some predefined templates, and where they can apply some standardized styling, quickly integrate the all that collected data into some backend CRM that has been already configured through an IT persona. So they should have a structured thought process, right? So in this interface that we have built recently, you can see the structured thought process. There are different tabs for configuring various parts of the form, so you can start building it step by step. On the very first screen, we'll simply select our template. So we click create adaptive form, we select a home loan application template. On the next screen, we select a particular styling, say an urban styling. All these predefined styling, are loaded into the system. And then on the third screen, we are selecting where we want to submit our data. So this could be an API gateway. Right now, we will select Salesforce, just like William was showing. We also have default data connections that are available for Microsoft Dynamics CRM. So multiple CRMs that we support, or you can submit the data into any of the backend services that are hosted over REST protocol. So as soon as you select the backend database or the CRM, right, and after that you can decide how do you want to submit the form. So you can submit to an endpoint, or like William was saying, you can invoke a Power Automate flow. So we select a Power Automate flow, and we selected the flows that are configured. So we selected the housing loan flow, and then we click create and just provide the form name. That's how easy it is to create a form, based out of a template.
Hey,
So
Anurag,
I'll
before you move on, I think it's probably worth discussing that. I think from a technical perspective, often we go and say, well, all our forms will go this way. But the reality in a
yeah,
broader organization is that there are very structured forms. There are some ad hoc forms that you spin up and you need for a few months, etc. So having that flexibility to say, okay, yeah, we want to get things into the CRM or into this backend system, but every form is different, and being able to have options. So structured, Power Automate, etc. I think gives those flexibility, right?
yeah. And what we are working on in terms of latest innovations that probably they'll be released probably this month itself. So no harm in sharing. we are working on very easy connectors to data connectors to SharePoint, OneDrive, and similar easy storage mechanisms, so that business users, who want to store data into their, say, marketing owned SharePoint site, right? Or HR owned SharePoint site, or finance departmental SharePoint site, right? Or OneDrive folders. It should be pretty easy for them to just provide the location and be done with it. They don't need to worry about all the technical details about how to access and what the tokens are. So nothing sort of any developer intervention is required. It should be all click and create.
And kind of back to what William was showing before, once you expose these services out and permission based, of course,
Yeah.
then there's different levels of form author capability. So it may be that I can just consume a fragment that already has everything wired up, or I might have more permission so I can consume a service, etc. So IT security doesn't have to worry about, we're exposing all these different backend systems. They're abstracted in a way, but at the same time, you do get that benefit having more people being able to reuse these services. So there's that benefit, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So cool. So William has already shown us, the form authoring. So I'll skip that part, right? The details of form authoring. I'll show you, what the end user experience will look like. So that's another video, right? So this is the form that home loan V2 form that got created, and there can be multiple forms all organized into different hierarchy, easy to maintain hierarchy. And this is the form editor that William was showing. So form was created, and a lot of styling and other things that could be done. So if you look at the properties, it will have the Power Automate flow, that was selected in the wizard interface. So we can see the submission properties, and here's the Power Automate flow that was selected, right? The form authors can also change the Power Automate flow or other things in the adaptive form editor interface. They can also enable secure electronic signatures based on Adobe Sign integration that we have, and quickly configure what kind of signing experience is, and who's the signer that they want to configure in the form. It's all click and configure. There is no code required. It's all out of the box integrations that are available. So here is the Power Automate flow, and this is created inside the Microsoft Power Automate authoring. This is separate. As you can see, this is make.powerautomate.com environment. What this Power Automate flow is trying to do is it's trying to automate an organizational's business process, and the various things that it's doing. So let me try to quickly explain it in a bit, right? So this flow is set to trigger when an HTTP request is received. So we'll trigger it when a form is submitted. Then it passes the incoming data into JSON, and it sends an email to an applicant, so that thank you for submitting your application, and we'll review it. And it stores all these submitted data and attachments, and all the other things into SharePoint. So it's creating as a step, two steps. It's doing the SharePoint operations, then it's sending out an email for internal review that a form has been submitted, so somebody needs to kindly review it. And it's also posting a message to internal Slack channel, right? We'll see it in action, but
Yeah.
that's how this is. And as you know, right, so Power Automate has like tons of integrations with all the other third party systems. So you can almost automate anything that you can think of, right? With the Power Automate flows. And that's a very good tool, and it's all business user friendly for authoring. So we'll move a little bit ahead in this, and it's just showing various steps. So it's all real. This is a video, but there's no smoke and mirrors. And this is the end user experience, right? When the user is filling out a form. So what is happening on this form is, we have integrated it with an OTP validation service. And when we provide a mobile number, right, so it will send out a SMS based OTP, and which will use to validate a real user rather than a bot, right? So we click send OTP, and the user received an OTP. We are validating it. So once we validate it, we get the form, right? And it's having a lot of pre-fills, as you can see from the CRM, just like William was showing. So from the Salesforce CRM or MS Dynamics CRM or your databases, It can pre-fill a lot of data so that user doesn't have to go through all the pain of filling each and every field that is required, and it provides a great experience, and a faster conversion can happen. So when the user has filled out a form, she's clicking next and then providing her email ID. That's the only thing that we don't have. I'm providing my email ID over here for demo purpose, but this could be any email ID. And once she clicks submits, so after submitting, this is the Adobe Sign experience that is getting loaded within the same browser window. So you can see the digital version of that form that was mobile responsive adaptive form that was being filled. But now in Adobe Sign, what is happening is, a document of record PDF has been created using some, brand approved guidelines, and all the data is pre-filled here. So she'll sign this PDF. From an end user perspective, it's a very compliant and accessible experience both on mobile and desktop, and there are various signing options that the end user can leverage. So once they sign it, the final submission happens. So they get a thank you message, and this could have been a beautiful message, but apologies for that. And these are various emails that are getting triggered both internally and to the end user. So all these emails are getting triggered to my account. So that's what we are seeing. So Adobe Sign is also triggering. So you can see this mail that is triggered from Power Automate. Thank you for submitting your application, and your application is under review. Right, this is from v.finance team, and this is another internal email step that we saw in the Power Automate flow, that the message is being sent to an internal person that this application has been submitted, so kindly review it, and this is the SharePoint location where the application is stored, and this is under SharePoint. So the document that was signed is also stored, what the end user submitted. All the data that was pre-filled or supplied by the user is also captured here, and this was the email ID that I provided in the demo earlier. Then the end user is also getting a record for the agreement that they signed, right, and for their own record keeping purposes. And an internal Slack message is also being fired to Microsoft Power Automate platform that an application has been submitted by so and so person, so they need to kind of review it. So that was both the authoring and the end user experiences that we wanted to demo. uh, this is all this all functionality is available through drag and drop, right, and click and configure. A similar capability is also available that is being launched very shortly, within a month or so, is around headless capability, wherein you can render the same form, show the same form in your React app, and you can build some standardized interfaces there, or you can interface with chatbots and other things.
Wow,
So
there's
Mark,
a
that was the demo.
big sneak there. I think you just released, and we might have to get you on for another session just to talk about headless forms. Sounds amazing, but we'll wait until you've got that ready to share with customers in more detail. But I want to go back just a couple of things you mentioned in the demonstration. I think a lot of times we keep a piece of paper as a form is because that's the document of record. And I think what you highlighted is the form filling process versus the document can be separated, and you can still have a great experience around the document you hand back as the record, right? Including the signature process. I think that was good. You didn't touch on it, but both you and William showed data submission. And can you maybe talk about where is the data, and what is Adobe's role in the caretaking of that information? William, I'll start with you.
Yeah, look, and it's a very pertinent question, right? Because this is something that comes up, and with security being top of mind for everyone, especially with everything that's been going on in Australia and the world lately. Now, what we do is we connect to all of these different endpoints because we're actually not storing your information within AEM. What we're doing is we're providing that safe passage. So we help with the collection of the information and the transmission of that information in an encrypted form so that it gets to your systems. So your systems that you've already security reviewed, that you've had all of these pen tests and security tests on. So ultimately, because that's where it's going to be most useful for you. And again, just to recap, that could be, your SQL database or your CRM or your ERP or whatever line of business solution that is.
Yeah. Anurag, what's the product view on that?
Yeah, so we focus on two things from a data perspective. First is we don't store anything. The second is the data in transit and even temporary data in storage, right? That shouldn't be with us, right? And that should everything should happen over secure channels. So all your data is connected through HTTPS over SSL. So that's pretty much secure. There is no temporary storage at all, and there are ways to externalize even the temporary storages into your own customer managed database, right? So it's all customer managed storage. We don't have a role to play there except for providing, just acting as a pipe, or just acting as a connectors.
Yeah, I think it's very important. So, initial configuration, that's where maybe IT get involved as far as what's the data policies, where is the backend storage, etc. But then that abstraction to let, as much as the business and, still technical people, but definitely not coding, just get in there and start building forms en masse and maintain them. And like we say right at the top, that's where the work is, right? It's not building the form, it's often keeping it modern, keeping connected, updating it. And, as all those little compliance things come through, it's just, going through all of that. We've seen this for many years, through people building forms in InDesign and then in Acrobat and so on. That's why they love these tools, because I can churn out quickly. We're just doing this with a highly connected system. So that is awesome. Gents, we're getting close to time. Is there anything you wanted to, like any topics or anything you'd like to drop before we wrap up?
Yeah, and just to, I just wanted to add to your point, Mark, there. So it's not only about, getting pre-filled data or, submitting data. It's also about the data that's being processed in your business process, automation workflows,
Yeah.
right? So whether it's an AEM workflow or it's a Power Automate workflow, right? So whatever data is flowing through those workflows also need to be secure, and that's where we are excelling, right? Both from an AEM workflow point of view, there's no storage there, as well as from a Power Automate workflow processing. So yeah.
Yeah, look, and certainly from me, just to wrap up, and I know that I've talked about the ease of authoring and from that internal perspective, and I think that you touched on it before, but we talked about all of these different notification channels and all of these different endpoints for data. But let's remember what that translates to. That translates to better customer experience, right? Because if the customer is getting the responses quicker, it's being routed to the right department first time, they're getting the information and the experience that they deserve. And so ultimately, this is everything that I do at Adobe. This is all about providing those customer experiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, James, this has been an amazing discussion. I think you've teased out a few reasons. We're going to have to get you back on the show. Can I count on you to come back? Anurag, you're going to have to tease out this headless forms, I think,
Sure.
as soon as you're ready. And so,
Absolutely. Yeah.
if you've been watching this, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you'll get the notification of when we can get Anurag back. William, can we do the same with you? Can we get you back in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also be watching with bated breath Anurag's headless forms, because this is something that I find pretty exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, if someone's watching and they're like, okay, how do I read more? Any resources or anything you recommend, like on Experience League, etc.? There's quite a lot, but what's your guidance for someone who might be just thinking, yeah, I need to do something? Obviously, talk to Adobe, and William will be standing by to come out and say hi. But what else? Any other tips and tricks?
Yeah, look, I would say Experience League, I find, is a fantastic resource, but get involved in your communities, guys. That's something that Adobe have got the gold standard of, is it's our communities. And the idea sharing and the knowledge sharing that are part of these communities, chances are you're not the first to go through any particular pain or problems that you want to solve. So that would be where I would turn to first, and that is actually where I do turn to first. So please do get involved in the communities.
Great. Sounds good. Anurag?
And on the experience league, I would like to point to one specific resource is, build your first adaptive form. That's a very great, step-by-step tutorial helping you learn the adaptive form and data integration and other parts of it. And we just always happy to provide assistance, or experience league overall is great, but I think that tutorial needs a call out.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, well, let's leave it there. Again, thanks to you both, and thanks to the audience for watching. And always love to get feedback on how we can do these shows better and what topics you'd like to see. Until next time, thank you all. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Mark, for hosting this up. Take care, guys. Bye.